Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. Immortals Fenyx Rising released in 2020 and judged by everything we know about this game, it was a commercial success for Ubisoft. It probably didn't came nowhere near the sale numbers of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but still, it managed to make Ubisoft happy. The reception for this game was solid, but nothing outstanding. And I think the majority of Ubisoft releases can be described in a similar manner. I'm usually not that invested into Ubisoft unreleased games, but I made an exception for Gods and Monsters. The mix of AC Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild was really appealing to me from the very beginning. Yeah, Gods and Monsters was actually supposed to be the original name of the game. The thing is, Ubisoft was forced to change the name of the game because Monster Energy Company was threatening to press charges against Ubisoft. That was totally ridiculous, but anyway, I was pretty invested in this game even before it came out, and I wasn't disappointed at all when I finally got to play it. After I finished the game for the first time, which was like almost 3 years ago, I never came back for another playthrough. I remembered a lot of things when I started playing again, but this new playthrough still managed to feel fresh for me. So I thought now would be a great time to revisit it. Speaking about being fresh, Raid Shadow Legends has fresh new champions to collect. With over 700 champions in the game, each with their own unique spells and abilities, you can definitely make a very unique party. All of these champions come from different factions like Lizardmen, Orcs, Undead, or from the rest of 15 awesome factions. My favorite champion is Turvold, because he's a Viking-like character with a very cool two-handed sword. Find out why 400 million players in 190 countries are playing this mobile RPG and stick around to get some unique in-game rewards. Take your party of champions to different game modes like terrifying dungeons where brutal bosses push your tactical skills to the max. Or maybe you prefer the PvP combat. Join the newly added live arena and battle the players from all around the world in 3 exciting PvP modes. Raid has constant updates and they keep adding new modes, features and champions to ensure there's always a new challenge to take on. They just added a fearsome new boss, Akumori the Phantom Shogun. You practically have infinite ways to test out team compositions, tweak your champion's build and optimize your epic party. It's very easy to play on mobile, or take your progress and transfer it to desktop so the fun never stops. If you somehow missed the animated limited series called Raid Call of the Arbiter, you can check out all 10 episodes on their official website or YouTube channel. Download Raid right now by using my link in the description or by scanning the QR code and get an epic champion Drake along with some other very useful items. Once you're in the game, you can find me under the name Click for Gameplay. Fenyx Rising has a Greek mythology setting with a big emphasis on humor.
You mean all the stories are real?
Something's wrong with your face. It's doing that slack-jawed thing again.
The opening cutscene might give you a different vibe of the game. The main antagonist, called Typhon, has a little monologue about his hatred for humans and the god of lightning, Zeus. But quickly after this you get to see Zeus and Prometheus trying to make a deal in a very comedic tone.
One of those evil parasites is about to save your royal ass.
My ass is safely lodged in the Aegean stables.
That tone persists through the entire game, basically. Some of the jokes didn't land that well.
Are you sure?
Does a bear poop in the woods?
But overall, I think the humor is great in this game.
You're cute. Try not to impale yourself on anything.
Zeus and Prometheus will be the narrators of the story, and I'm never a huge fan of that design decision. No matter if it's good or bad, I always think the constant narration is very annoying. However, the narration in this game usually triggers on some major events, and the humor makes it more bearable.
So it's also a symbol of Athena's love for Papa Zeus.
If you say so.
The narration is not as aggressive like in some other similar games like Biomutant for example, although the narration in that game was only one of the problems. Anyway, you play as a guy or a girl called Fenyx. There is a very simple character creation system with just a handful of options. But the customization system in the game gives you a lot of options to make your Fenyx look very cool. We'll get to that soon enough. Fenyx is supposed to save the world, and your main objective is to free the gods and ultimately kill Typhon. Ever since Typhon got free, the gods have simply vanished, and even Zeus lost his thunder. You quickly find out that all of the gods have been completely demoralized and your job is to convince them to help you. There are some very entertaining interactions with the gods in this game.
Oh, so a gorgeous goddess in love with a chicken? I'm sure that's illegal.
Definitely not illegal.
Upon arriving on the island, Fenyx discovers that his brother and the rest of the army have been petrified. And not long after that, he starts learning about what happened and that he's supposed to be the hero this world needs. I think that's everything you should know about the story, without spoiling too much. I enjoy the story quite a lot, and I think most of the characters are very memorable. Just don't expect an amazing storytelling out of this game. And like I said, it's all about humor, which makes the game very relaxing to play.
Is where the gods get their dental exams?
No, it's where we rip off our skin to change our appearance.
Now let's talk about the gameplay. Fenyx Rising is essentially an action-adventure game with a big open world. It also has a lot of light RPG features in terms of progression system and gear customization. Let's talk about the open world first. From the very beginning, you are free to explore this open world with a great deal of freedom. It's not wise to visit all the zones right away before you improve your character at least a little bit. This also depends on the difficulty though. I played the game both times on hard, and I would recommend you to do the same if you are accustomed to action adventures and RPGs in general. I personally would prefer a single fixed difficulty in games like this because I think that's way easier to balance out properly. Anyway, I absolutely love this open world. The game has a beautiful cartoony art style, very vibrant color palette and a bunch of things to discover. Exploration feels amazing if you don't mind the obvious pattern which Ubisoft is using for the majority of their games. This kind of exploration is not my personal favorite because it feels very systematic, it's like a checklist. The first thing that might come to your mind when I mention this is climbing towers. And while this is present in the game as well, it's not that big of a deal. On the contrary, I think it's really well done actually. You only have a handful of very tall statues to climb and discover one part of the map. Some of them you won't be even able to climb until you upgrade your stamina or stack up a lot of stamina potions. When you reach the top of the statues, you can scan the whole map and a bunch of objectives can pop up which you can choose to pursue next. New gear icons, quests and puzzles, all of them are clearly visible on the map. I would always prefer to discover things on my own and not use the map as Google Maps, but as an actual map in the game. And I think Ubisoft kinda fixed that issue with Assassin's Creed Valhalla with the optional Pathfinder mode. It makes the exploration feel more organic and immersive if you ask me. Unfortunately, Fenyx Rising doesn't have that, although you can choose not to use the scanning feature. Putting that aside, I enjoyed the exploration quite a bit. The world looks simply beautiful and it has a lot of verticality. Different zones have a unique look and feel to them. You can explore this world on foot, use a mount or glide with your wings. It's very easy to combine these traveling methods. For example, even before you land, you can press the button and you'll mount the horse instantly. It goes the other way around as well. You can jump from your horse and use the wings, which is really useful for quickly avoiding the fall of the cliff or a bridge. Like I said, there is a lot of verticality, so this happens quite often. The exploration is very seamless. Taming mounts is fun as well because they come with different amounts of stamina. For example, this rare mount has 3 stamina bars, which is very useful, especially in the early game. It incentivizes you to use the mount more than wings because of how much stamina it has. You don't have to stop for a very long time. There are a lot of things to loot and fight behind every corner of the map. Some places of interest have a very unique look and they did a great job with getting me excited to explore them. Fenyx Rising is heavily focused on the main quests, so you won't be bothered with a bunch of nonsense filler side quests. Instead, you can choose to do some optional challenges if you wish to. But on the other side, this also means that you won't have a lot of NPCs to interact with in this huge open world. Although it kinda makes sense from the story perspective, but still, I wish there were more NPCs to meet in the game in villages or cities, things like that. Overall, the exploration is amazing, despite all the issues I mentioned. I really think the only major problem you could have is the checklist exploration. Other issues I talked about are more subjective. Now let's talk about the combats. If you played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, this combat system is going to feel very familiar. It's a bit simpler compared to Odyssey, but it still has enough features to make it more complex than your average action adventure. You get 2 weapon slots for the sword and the battle axe, a bow, reasonable amount of different abilities, and a lot of armor sets and weapons which can affect your abilities. There is some wiggle room for different playstyles, but not a lot to be honest. And it's not like it needs to have different builds because it's an action adventure, but this is my RPG brain speaking. It only depends on which ability you like using the most. However, weapons and armors can have some very cool and useful effects, but let's talk about the action itself first. Your light attacks with the sword will regenerate stamina, while heavy attacks will inflict defense damage. All enemies have a visible defense bar, and when you fill it up, they will be stunned for a couple of seconds. Besides the heavy attacks, your abilities also inflict defense damage. So basically, your main goal is to do as much as defense damage as quickly as possible, at least that's what I try to do. There are some specific design decisions which I really like in combat. For example, when you're using your abilities, you won't be able to take any damage. This incentivizes you to be more aggressive in combat when you get comfortable with the mechanics. Along with the combo meter, which boosts your damage at certain thresholds, but it resets if you get hit. The speed of the combat is definitely on the faster side, but it's not extremely fast. Fenyx Rising also has defense mechanics, which pretty much work identical to AC Odyssey. Meaning that if you dodge right before getting hit, time slows down, which allows you to inflict some free damage. The parry system has a similar effect, but it also inflicts defense damage, which makes it worth doing. There is some pretty cool stuff you can manage to pull off while fighting certain enemies. For example, you can get to learn an ability to throw rocks, which you can use in combat, and it's also mandatory in puzzle solving. There are enemies that can throw rocks at you, but you can catch them in mid-air and throw it back. It's hilarious. You can parry enemies in mid-air as well, which is really cool, and combine it with your melee attacks. It's a flexible combat system, which feels really polished. After all, this is not the first integration of such combat systems, so that's not surprising. In a way, it feels better than AC Odyssey, and the simple design of it only works in its favor. There is a reasonable amount of different enemy types and bosses, although the game sometimes copy and paste certain regular enemies as boss fights. However, those kinds of fights are usually optional. The actual boss fights in vaults and in the open world are unique and interesting to fight. The humor doesn't stop even in combat, because the bodies of enemies will just fly away when you kill them. It's hilarious and kinda satisfying. Hard difficulty is balanced properly, for the most part. Some of the boss fights can feel like they have bloated health pools, but this also depends on your character upgrades. There are no levels in this game at all, it all depends on your gear, stamina and health upgrades, and most importantly, your abilities. I'm pretty sure that enemies don't have any form of scaling attached to their damage or health pools, but I might be wrong. It feels like the only thing that matters in fights is how much you improve your damage, health and stamina. Speaking of that, the game has a lot of different currencies you're going to collect while doing certain activities. Upgrading potions, increasing stamina and health, improving the gear, all of those activities require different currency. That might sound annoying, but it comes naturally while playing the game because you're going to do these activities anyway. There is an identical customization system for the gear like in AC Odyssey. You can change the appearance of an item into another item as long as you discovered it first. The majority of armor sets and weapons look very cool and flashy. You can even get unique wings, which is pretty cool. Speaking about that, there is an in-game store as well, where you can purchase stuff for real money. Amazing. I will never support such business practices, especially in single-player games, but this didn't affect my playthrough at all. All of the items in the store are just pure cosmetic. That's not an excuse though, because I think the visual progression in RPGs is extremely important. But as long as the game offers you cool items to find without buying them from the external store, I can tolerate pure cosmetic items in shop. Although to be honest, the cosmetic items in the shop look amazing and better than most gear you can find in the game. By the way, there is a currency you can get by doing these tasks, and you can buy some of the store items from Hermes. I believe I had some store currency on my account already on this review copy when I got the game, and I bought one shiny skin. Anyway, back to the game. When you get to help the gods, you get some unique abilities, which are really useful. The effects on items you can get can be very basic or very specific. Like I said, this can change the way you fight enemies, but not in a huge way. I like the bow gameplay in this game, but I wish it does a bit more damage. I mean, you can find bows that deal a lot more damage to health and defense meter, but using the bow feels more like a utility. I'm going to guess that it feels a lot better on the normal difficulty, but that's not an excuse. I don't think it's bad, but I think it could have been a lot better. Then we have all the abilities you can learn by spending the currency you get from the vaults. Vaults are like dungeons with puzzles, basically, and when you complete them, you get rewarded with one of the currencies. You can pretty much get all of the upgrades for abilities, it only matters in which order you choose to get them. Once again, it's not like you get to make builds. The second huge part of the gameplay are puzzles and platforming. I remember saying in my original review, if you don't like puzzles, you're probably not going to like this game. And I still stand by that, but what I failed to mention back then is the accessibility options you can enable. These options can make the puzzles way easier to solve. I found most puzzles reasonably challenging and fun to do, even though I'm not a huge fan of puzzles in general. The big vaults you're going to explore have some pretty challenging puzzles, but up to that point, the game does a good job with teaching you how everything works. Puzzles in the open world are usually more simple and straightforward. The same abilities you use in combat are also used for puzzle solving. Most of these puzzles require you to push, pull, shoot or carry something. And they just keep getting more complex, but never in a tedious way. The guiding arrow is probably my most favorite skill, and I like those puzzles quite a bit. The music in the game is decent, but to be honest with you, I only remember the main theme of the game, which is pretty damn good. That's probably because you don't get to hear the music that much in regular gameplay while exploring the world. I like the sound effects and the environmental sounds as well. The voice acting is really good.
Aha! You need my help. Typhon is free.
You once fought beside his allies, the Titans. Convince him to stand down.
The game received a couple of big DLCs, which add a lot more content. A new God DLC basically continues the main story of the game, and it contains a lot of spoilers. You play as the maxed out Fenyx, and you can transfer your save from the base game. There is a brand new map of the world and a lot more content. While Myths of the Eastern Realm is almost a standalone game, you play as a completely new character, and the DLC is based around the Eastern culture. If you like the base game, you should definitely check out both of these DLCs. To conclude this video, I think it's pretty obvious that I really like this game.
Something's wrong with your face.
I actually think it's really underrated, and one of the reasons for that is probably Ubisoft's bad reputation. It's still definitely worth playing if you ask me. The graphics and the art style will only make it age like fine wine throughout the years. Unfortunately, I don't believe we're going to see any new content for it, but there's always a chance for the sequel. Anyway, tell me what you think about Fenyx Rising in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree? Check out Raid Shadow Legends and grab those unique rewards. Don't forget to subscribe, and liking the video would mean a lot. Speaking about supporting the channel, I recently made my official merch website with a bunch of cool t-shirts and hoodies, so you can check that out. There are some very cool designs in the theme of the channel, and I plan to add a lot more. And if you want to support the channel more directly, you can always become a Patreon or a YouTube member. Many thanks to all of my current supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.